Hey folks, MasakoX here. The legend of the duck is quite a lengthy one. Krillin, the best friend of Goku, one day chose to alter his destiny by wanting to become more like his taller ally. And instead of going about this the usual way and relying upon strength and training and elbow grease to get the goal that he craved, he simply wished on Shenron to get there relatively quickly. However, the dragon took it way too literally, and instead of a simple power boost, we got ourselves another Saiyan being created right there and then. Granted, in the regular timeline, this is not that likely to occur, but it's never really been fully confirmed. And supposing that it did, how would the characters to this change, and would Krillin act like a typical Saiyan? Or would the residual humanity left within him, the Mallard, be enough to avert another malady from going down within the dragon world? What if the duck became a monkey? Or became a shirt which you could get via MasakoX.com and become a Destructo duck for yourself? In the last part, Super Duper Perfect Cell had been lapping up the success of being able to have a second helping of Android in the form of Lazuli, Future 18. Krillin was as nettled as you could get in that situation. Peace was not an option. And yet he had very little going for them in which to be able to mount a viable countering of the Bugman. That is until Android 16 showed up, having detected a superior model to himself. In this scenario, 16's instruction to eliminate Goku had been transferred to Cell, and thusly left him open to new instruction since Gero wasn't around to input a new one. So Krillin took this in his stride, and used his human cunning to tell 16 to stop Cell, since he had been causing chaos and going against what he was originally instructed to do. This 16 is far less emotional than the original one, but still wanted to sort out the mess that had befallen his siblings. 16 fought Super Duper Perfect Cell, but it was a relatively one-sided affair, in favour of the latter. Before 16 though gave Cell a big hug and promptly blew up, since his device was still located in his body and hadn't been removed by Bulma. Cell's body had been reduced to a single leg, and even when he managed to restore himself, the amount of energy and residual damage from the blast at point-blank range meant that he was in a really bad way. No sensu beats for this guy. And Krillin made it even worse when Krilla went Super Kaioken on him. All thanks to King Kai's training and learning of Super Saiyan to try and make it work together. But the story wasn't over. Shenron brought back all those felled by Cell and Gero, and that meant the androids were revived and left to go about their business. Lazuli went back to the future and dealt with her version of 16 by getting Bulma to probe Gero's lab and make a device to stop 16 with 18 safely locked away. The future was saved, and Lazuli was able to return to the past to reunite with the Saiyan Krillin who she had grown to love. And this is where we resume. Lazuli and Krillin were staring at one another. It was a rather surreal position for Lazuli to find herself in. For the first time in her entire waking life as an android, she had nothing to worry about. She and her revived Dragon Team allies had managed to find and destroy Cell in the future before it had a chance to do any harm to her home, and thusly save the future from any further potential threats. Now, she was here, back in the past. What was she going to do now? Was she going to stay here and live a life with Krillin, someone she had grown to love? But then she would have to cope with the fact that she was sharing a world with another version of herself, and yet not herself. This version of herself, 18, was not quite like her. Thanks to Bulma taking her in, she had managed to claw back more of her past life and memory, whereas with this 18, that was sadly not possible. The traces of hope that could have brought that memory back long gone with the remains of Gero's lab. Quite frankly, they were lucky to be alive thanks to the Dragon Balls. Could she take Krillin with her to the future perhaps? Well, not quite. He'd have to deal with a Krillin there. Krillin could tell Lazuli was struggling, but chose to talk it out with her. On a date to the beach, Krillin asked her what she wanted to do. I just want to get away from it all. I've known nothing but merciless destruction at the hands of my supposed brother unit. 16 did nothing but decimate everything in its path. It was programmed to obliterate Goku, and yet it saw everything as that. Nothing was safe, and now everything is safe, and done with something so straightforward. It makes me sick to know that something like that was so obvious. We spent years bashing our heads against a wall, and the solution was practically staring us in the face. It's a lot to unpack. Krillin nodded. I get it. It's really heavy to realize your world's changed all of a sudden. When I wished to be like Goku, I didn't realize what could change for me going forward. In one wish, I changed everything about me. I became stronger, had more potential, and yet I've given up a lot of what made me me. It's a lot to take in, I'm sure, but it's nothing to be scared of. It's not? Lazuli looked curious. Of course not, said the duck with a smile. It's the chance to start something new. Besides, you have a time machine right there. You can go back to where you left off if you didn't like it. Well, come on. You spent 5 years fixing the world to ensure it'll thrive. I think you've earned a little break, am I right? Lazuli quietly chuckled. That part's true. Well, I guess I can afford to hang out here for a while. Maybe more. She gave Krillin a sultry look, to which the duck blushed profusely. Indeed, there was more. Lazuli and Krillin ended up getting married not long after. They had a feeling that they could bond even more thanks to them having a massive upheaval in their lives, and that they really could rely on each other for companionship and solace. And hey, she found the little guy quite cute and all. Everyone was pleased to see Lazuli choose to remain in the past. She'd done plenty for the future, and deserved the chance for some happiness. Thanks to her, the future had managed to regain its heroes, and would ensure that they would never rest, and always be training for any future threat. Which, as we know, is a handy way to go about things, given what is destined to come in the future's future, if you know what I mean. Now I bet you're all wondering about Vegeta. What happened to him? What kind of ways could I make his life really miserable? Because that's apparently what I like to do in these stories, which is absolutely not true. He just makes the decisions for himself. Well, he was quite sore as to what happened with Cell. And granted, Krillin had nothing to do with him being quite handily trounced by the Bugman, but neither could he get over the fact that Krillin had, quite frankly, stolen the show. After all of the years of putting up with that fake Saiyan, the little monkey wannabe had genuinely shown promise, and was potentially a divergent evolution of the Saiyan model. A Saiyan with the heart of a human, as well as the spirit, that was bolstered by the Saiyan acquired potential. It was a formidable thing to go up against. Perhaps Vegeta was wrong. Krillin might have actually done something smart without him even knowing that he'd done it. He didn't run away from it either, or choose to reverse it. In fact, if Vegeta wanted to, he could easily just wish for the Saiyan within Krillin to be removed. Really show that punk what for, but that wasn't his style. He hated the status quo right now, sure, but to do something so petty? No. This was an important yardstick in which to aim for, actually. He had to find a way to get past Krillin in power. He would find a way. Vegeta was focused, not lost, unlike the original. And as for the others, they kept on training. They were buoyed by the powers of Kaioken, and Goku desperately wanted to get a handle on Super Kaioken himself, or as Krillin liked to coin it, Super Saiyan. It had a nice ring to it, he thought. But also the little guy was feeling that Super Saiyan itself could be taken further than what had been previously discovered. I think there's more to this power. Like, there are more levels. Well, what are we waiting for? Said a pumped Goku. Let's find it! I want to find out where we can go with this, buddy. Krillin was just so happy to hear that he and Goku were closer than ever as friends. By him becoming a Saiyan, it had given Goku more focus and awareness of his friends on Earth, and kept him further grounded instead of only thinking for himself. The duck had sensed it starting to happen back after the 23rd tournament. That Goku was starting to drift away from the group, sensing that he was different from them without knowing he was a Saiyan. Granted, being away for 3 years too would do that to most people, but it was never a nice thing to encounter. Here though, Goku was level-headed and willing to learn. Piccolo too was eager to push Kaioken to its limits. Thanks to his physiology, he could push the power further than most others. Kaioken times 100 thanks to Krillin and King Kai's modifications was quite possible in short bursts, with times 50 more stable, akin to regular Super Saiyan, thusly keeping Piccolo in line with the Saiyans for much longer. something of which Gohan and the Namekian were quite pleased about. For many years, this remained the same. Gohan grew up with a good dynamic and had gained a brother in the form of Goten, who in turn had a father there all the time, and someone to train with instead of it being solely Chi-Chi and Gohan. The Son family were a little more harmonious here than in the original, but Chi-Chi was still insistent though of Gohan's tutelage, and Krillin chose not to rock the boat in that regard. Sure, he liked Gohan training, but he also understood that an education was necessary for living on Earth, the human part of him factoring into that. In fact, another factor was influencing his decision. He and Lazuli had a kid. That's Marron. This Marron, though, is now half Saiyan, half human cyborg. Now, I know a lot of you have been wondering about Marron's potential, and fear not, we will cover this here, much more so than the official lore has done, which is next to non-existent. For now, though, let the gal have a calm upbringing for now. Her time will come. We now reach age 774. Gohan is heading for high school, and the 25th World Martial Arts Tournament is coming up. Apparently, there has been some buzz as to the previous champion and his whereabouts. Hercule had won the last one. Whilst the bluster with Cell had been going down, our heroes had sadly missed the contest to try and find a way of keeping the championship within the family. And yeah, so it was natural for them to want to have a go and not miss out this time around. Hercule, though, the incumbent champion, had been missing. He hadn't been seen for a while, and there would be constant newscasts of his daughter Videl pleading for him to come home. He had been quite popular too. Yes, not as popular as he was in the original, but he was still a B-list celebrity, not bad at all. So him vanishing was starting to make headlines over the weeks. When Gohan got to school, he had realised that Videl was in his class. He was quite the shy boy, him having had little experience of city life. He also hadn't become the great Saiyan man in this timeline. Shocking, I know. Him having spent all his training time with Krillin and his dad, and that meant something had to give. The influence of the Ginyu Force hadn't quite permeated through to him as much as before. Meanwhile, up on the lookout, which by coincidence is a podcast of Havanars, by the way, go and check it out there had been a change of the guard. Kami had been wishing to retire, and Gohan had set upon the idea of recruiting Dende from New Namek to replace him in time. Dende had been teleported to Earth via the Namekian Dragon Balls after going through King Kai's communications and instructions, and had been really excited to become the new Guardian of Earth in the fullness of time. By the time we get to age 774, Kami felt that his time was well and truly up. He had nothing left to teach Dende, and so he felt that he could hand over the reins, as it were, with confidence. Before he did, though, he requested Piccolo to be there to witness the handover. But he had something else in mind too. When the big green got there, he didn't expect what Kami was about to say. "Piccolo, I've uncovered something in my studies. Something I wish to share with you. Something of which is forbidden amongst the Namekians, but I feel might be the best way of thanking you." "Thanking me? For what?" "For not destroying the world. I feared for a long time that King Piccolo's influence would one day supersede your own, but I am relieved that it has not come to pass. You have been tempted many times, have been blessed with great power, and not taken the chance when it was open to you. With that, I thank you. Place your hand on my chest, friend." Piccolo was stunned. Not once before had Kami called him a friend. Dende was resolute. He knew what was about to happen, as did Mr. Popo. "Dende, take this." He chucked over his staff, and that set Dende off. Tears were welling up. Piccolo didn't notice, though, as he placed his hand on Kami's chest. "Use my gift wisely. I will be watching you." "Watching?" But before Piccolo could finish that train of thought, Kami powered up and glowed white hot, and in a few seconds, he was gone. This was amazing. He felt incredible. "What's happened? Where's Kami?" But he kinda knew the answer. But then Dende explained the art of Namekian fusion, something that had been banned amongst Namekians due to their numbers being so few. They needed as many hands as they could muster, and to fuse would not only be incredibly selfish, but it would reduce the number of skilled hands and genetic diversity. Here, though, Kami chose not to tell Piccolo, but Piccolo could feel the gains. It was quite the potent gift, that's for sure. Huh, wily old coot. He felt great though. Dende immediately set to work. Piccolo, I shall get to making my own copy of Shenron. With Kami a part of you, unfortunately, the balls are inert. It'll take me a while, but we'll have a new set ready soon. Hopefully with some upgrades, he said with a happy expression. A little bit later, the gang had arrived at the tournament and were planning on taking part. Even Vegeta rocked up to take part. Him keen to show off some of his new powers and hoping to face Krillin in the ring. However, there was a figure that caused a stir. Somebody who had been missing for weeks now and had just suddenly turned up. Hercule had arrived. Yet he looked somehow odd. He was paler. His hair wasn't as voluminous as before, much smaller. Yet he looked more jacked than ever, and topless too. Only his trousers were the same, and despite Videl being there to take part as well, he had not been moved at the sight of his own daughter, not even her hugging him, and that got everyone concerned. What happened to him to cause him to become so callous and distant? Was this some kind of training to help him defend his title? Was it worth this stark change? Well, the ring would decide that. Gohan saw Videl and asked if she was okay. She hadn't taken to Gohan here as well as the original, and barely acknowledged his presence. I'm fine. Leave me alone. Gohan tried to help her relax, but she kept rebuffing him. Not knowing what to say, Gohan simply left her alone. Oh, Gohan, you gave up too soon, mate. As for Krillin, he felt great and confident. He hadn't noticed Hercule's changes, and instead was wanting to get the win from Goku. He had won the 23rd contest, and for Krillin to take the next one that they were entered for would be the ultimate icing on the cake. Sadly though, they wouldn't be meeting up in the rounds for a while. Krillin was going up against Tenshinhan instead. As he watched the first round, which was Hercule against his own daughter, he spotted a weird-looking figure. Short, purple with white hair, and with a much taller person beside him. Piccolo, who'd arrived just in time, was staring at them too, him sort of clocking onto them. And it became clear that something big was about to happen. With all these bizarre instances in one place, it was more than likely that Krillin's time of peace was about to be curtailed. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now. If you like this idea of Hercule acting differently, check out the full story here of Hercule becoming a less benevolent person, and how that could spell doom for Earth. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!